Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and at GDC this year, something very rare happened. A game engine came back from the dead. The C4 game engine just released version 7. Now, this is a game engine that's been around since like 2005. Now, you're going to see some footage running in the background. This is actually from a Tombstone game engine. It's a little confusing. As far as I can tell, the C4 engine stopped at version 6, was rebranded as the Tombstone engine. That seemed to kind of flop a bit, and now it is back again being called the C4 engine, which, by the way, is very tricky to Google or search because the C4 engine is also the name of a very famous series of engines in Corvette cars. Anyways, this guy is from Terathon Software, and it's a bit of a hard sell in this day and age because it's a commercial game engine in a world where we now have free versions of Unity and Unreal, and then completely free and open source options such as O3D and the Godot game engine. Also, you've got Stride, etc. So why would you spend money on a commercial game engine, especially one that has such a sporadic development time? And honestly, I can't give you a really good answer there. One thing I can say, though, is they have done a good job of supporting it. So if you've gotten any C4 licenses in the past, you will automatically get, well, not automatically, you got to sign up for it, but you will get C4 7 for free, which is very cool in that regard. Now, this guy is created by a company called Terathon Software. And to many of you, it's probably going to be most famous because of the series of books by the founder, Eric Lengel. I'm going to assume I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. But anyways, he wrote the Foundation of Game Engines development book, also the 3 GPU Gem books. He was the editor on those, which ironically enough are currently available on a Humble Bundle right now. And he also did a book on game development math, which I actually quite like. It was a very approachable book on the subject of game development math. On top of that, probably their most famous business right now is the Slug library, which is for doing text, high resolution, resolution independent 3D text on the GPU. As you can see, it's used by a number of different companies in various different industries. But what you're here about today is the C4 game engine. Now, what you're going to notice here is it costs $100. And why would you spend $100 on this game engine? And honestly, I don't know that I can give you an answer. There is source code available, which is always very nice. The cool thing, again, is there is a perpetual license for anyone that already purchased it. So if you already have a license, well, this one's a no-brainer. It does run on Windows 10, 11, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series S and X, and Xbox One. So if you're looking to support consoles, that is definitely a reason. Now, they do give a number of reasons why they would say. Here you can see the overall architecture of the engine, but there are reasons not to use the C4 engine, and some of these are a little on the borderline arrogant side. You prefer code that's hastily written in order to ship features as quickly as possible. Everybody knows that any good code base contains a ton of to-dos and fix-me's. You've surrendered yourself to the inevitability of frequent crashes in both the engine and the editor. You think you just have to live with it, and there's no practical way to have anything better. You don't mind it takes 20 minutes to build the engine after a minor source code change. You have lots of dependencies. You think lots of dependencies is good. Every game engine should use 4 different string classes and at least 7 3D vector types. You don't get mad when wildly exaggerated claims about robustness or scalability turn out to not hold water. It's okay because those marketing crooks were just doing their job. And then you enjoy working with Frankenstein architecture that was bolted together over 2 decades without any unifying vision, went through years of neglect by incompetent engineers, and is now held together with duct tape and string. Now, this last one actually strikes me as a little bit funny because this is now like a almost 2-decade-old game engine, and I'm not sure that there is more than a single developer working on it, and not calling him an incompetent engineer by any means, but you can definitely argue for neglect. So I don't know that I would keep this particular line in here in my selling points, but that is what Terathon say the reasons why you should not use the C4 engine. If you're interested in learning more, the documentation is all available on the wiki. Kind of gives you kind of an insight into all of the various different tools that go together inside of this engine, but what we're mostly here for is the 7.0 release. Now, when I talk about it has been a while, I don't exaggerate. So this release just came out yesterday, and we'll get to the release notes in just a second, but the last release was in 2018, and that is sort of the point where the Tombstone engine was launched. So if you want to learn a little bit more, there's kind of a version 6.9b called Tombstone that kind of we just pretend doesn't exist. It's the redheaded stepchild. It is not a thing. So in terms of the release notes for version 7, what is new in here? A lot of things around lighting and coloring, so new rendering techniques, etc. Atmospheric shadows have been added to the engine. Radiosity was renamed to has been replaced by luminance. Shader LODs were removed from the engine because they actually didn't make sense to use, and so on. Plus, Slug 6 was integrated into the engine. I mentioned earlier on, that's his GPU font rendering library. Mutators were renamed to sprockets, and so on. So, and also major update to the imposter system. So it just kind of changes across the board here. The tools also got some love here. And one of the things that you might be interested in, so is development going to continue on the C4 engine? And it does appear yes, because there are things that are in process. One of the big ones is that they're moving from an OpenGL rendering engine to a Vulkan code base. So some of the code is in version 7, but it's not yet complete. So if you're wondering about the future-proofness of this engine, it does appear the development is going to continue to happen. There also is going to be a new physically based metallic material attribute, a new fur shader, and train texturing is being updated. So that is the C4 engine, version 7. Again, it really kind of went missing for a very long time. So the last we heard from these guys was like 5 years ago. But if you had a license from one of these points in time, like going back to the very beginning, so the first release was, it's way older than I thought. No, wait, I said 2005, didn't I? Yeah, so I was accurate there. The first release, the actual release 1.0, never actually was called that. But the first shipping release looks like it was in 2008, and then there was a bunch of pre-builds before that. So 2005 through now, it's 18 years, so darn near a 20-year-old engine at this point. But can you trust an engine that disappeared for 5 years' time? That's hard to say, really. But it is source available. It has been used for commercial shipped games, and it supports consoles, which is a little bit rarer for these kind of projects. And as I mentioned earlier on, the author behind this is actually fairly well regarded. He's done a lot. He tried to do a Collada replacement. I don't think that really took off. He did a data interchange format. He's published a number of different books. And as I mentioned earlier on, if you're interested in checking out those GPU Gem books, they're actually currently available in a Humble Bundle. I will link that down below. They're great books. Highly recommended, by the way, the GPU Gems. And I don't know if his Foundation books are in that one as well, but I think they are. So, yep, that is the C4 engine back from the dead with the release of version 7. Have you ever used this engine? If so, what do you think? That's it. Talk to you all later. Goodbye.